Nightcast. Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth brings you the current news from the world today and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Understanding the end-time events leading to the peaceful world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth.
Greetings, friends. Welcome to this June 10, 2014 edition of Nightcast. Last night, we had some extreme thunderstorms in the Birmingham, Alabama area. And last night, there were violent storms that battered cities in western Germany overnight, killing at least 6 people. Friends, I thought there might be some commentary on this video, but perhaps not. I'll tell you that Essen and Oberhausen were hit by heavy rains and thunderstorms, 2 cities in Germany, and as I mentioned, the story tells us that at least 6 people were killed in these 2 cities in Germany in these violent thunderstorms there. And that's all we have there on that, really, is just this raw video footage for the moment. So we're going to come on out of that, and I'll go ahead and tell you about our next story. Merkel and Cameron in battle over European Commission. Excuse me, friends. The leaders of Sweden, Germany, Britain, and the Netherlands are meeting at a mini EU summit near Stockholm to try to reach a consensus on European reform. The controversial question of who is to head the European Commission is likely to be discussed, with David Cameron expected to attempt to block Jean-Claude Juncker from getting the job. It sets him against German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who publicly supports the ex-Luxembourg leader's appointment. Ben Wright has this report.
Going round in circles. Last night, the Swedish Prime Minister gave his guests a traditional greeting here at his summer retreat. But he, the Dutch Prime Minister, and David Cameron have a big difference with their other boating companion, the German Chancellor Angela Merkel, over who should be the next president of the EU Commission. David Cameron wants to stop Jean-Claude Juncker, the former Prime Minister of Luxembourg, getting Europe's top job. He thinks Mr. Juncker has jumped the gun, claiming a mandate to be Commission President after his centre-right group of parties won the most seats in the European elections. But the Prime Minister believes the process is a stitch-up. It's up to national EU leaders to select a candidate, which the Parliament then votes on.
The democratically elected leaders of Europe, we should be the ones to choose who should run these institutions rather than accept some new process which was never agreed. And I think that is important.
I caught up with Jean-Claude Juncker in Brussels last week, but he didn't want to speak.
Mr. Juncker, are you certain you'll be Commission President?
I don't give interviews now.
Do you mind that Britain are trying to stop you becoming President?
I'm not the spokesman of the British Prime Minister.
What do you think of the British Prime Minister?
Britain says he is an old-school Brussels fixer opposed to reform. But crucially, he has the backing of Mrs. Merkel, Europe's most powerful leader, and Germany supports the process that has made him the man to unseat, saying it's Britain that doesn't understand the rules. Yesterday, Angela Merkel said she would continue to lobby for Mr. Juncker, but it won't be decided overnight here.
This is about more than Mr. Juncker. There's now a power struggle underway between the European Parliament and EU leaders, and they're split on which way to pull. For David Cameron and his hopes of a renegotiated relationship with the European Union, the outcome of all this matters a lot. Ben Wright, BBC News, Harpsund, Sweden.
Friends, yesterday we showed you video of how the Pakistan's busiest airport, Karachi, had come under attack. Well, tonight, security forces have come under attack close to Pakistan's busiest airport in the city of Karachi, a day after militants stormed one of its terminals. The airport was forced to halt flights as gunmen on motorbikes launched an attack on a nearby training site for the security forces. Mike Wooldridge reports from Islamabad.
A new gunfight today on the edge of Pakistan's busiest airport. The target was a building close to the airport perimeter used by the Specialist Airport Security Force for training and weapons storage. The same force lost at least 11 members in Sunday's all-night gun battle at the airport. This latest clash erupted, according to officials, when two gunmen tried to enter the security building, firing shots. They then fled, the army and police bringing in reinforcements and fighting back as they pursued them over the course of an hour or so. As they did so, Pakistan's Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif called for the attackers to be eliminated. Flights were again suspended temporarily into and out of this key economic hub as the gunfight took place, and once again Pakistan's vulnerability to militancy was exposed to the world. The Pakistani Taliban admitted responsibility for Sunday's deadly battle, and a branch of the Taliban said it carried out the latest attack. The government is under pressure to respond, and earlier today, fighter aircraft bombed militant positions in one of the semi-autonomous tribal areas near the Afghanistan border. It said 25 militants were killed. Air raids of this kind were one of the reasons the Taliban said it staged the airport attack. Today, the bodies of 7 more victims of Sunday's attack were recovered. They'd taken refuge in a cold storage building and died there before they could be rescued. In all of this, there are tragic echoes of the cycle of violence that accompanied Taliban militancy at its peak here, only months after peace negotiations made a halting start. Mike Wooldridge, BBC News, Islamabad.
Thank you, Mike. Friends, I often bring up this chart during our program and discuss it. Now, we've got a lot of stories tonight, so I won't have any time really to spend on this chart. But for those of you who understand this chart and understand what I'm saying when I make mention that the 5th column over, depicting the 5th seal of Revelation, the Great Tribulation, if that doesn't occur this year with the way news and news stories are going, it'll be only because our Father and Jesus Christ have decided they need to delay it for the sake of the elect a little bit more again, because that's just the way the stories and things are heading. Our next story, rather shocking one for the United States, who helped create NATO. 5 NATO soldiers have been killed in Afghanistan after they were mistakenly hit by a U.S. airstrike. They call it friendly fire when the military kills some of its own men. The 5 troops with an Afghan soldier and an interpreter were killed by a bomb during a joint military operation, as David Loyne reports.
The US put out a full statement that they had 3 or so hours ago when they first confirmed that 5 people were killed. Their statement now calls it fratricide. They say tragically it may have been fratricide that was involved. Our thoughts go out to the families of those involved in it. And of course, fratricide is a word used by the US Army to mean the times when they kill their own side. We understand from Afghan sources on the ground, and I should stress that we haven't had this from international sources, but from Afghan civilian and military sources in the south who've been talking to us in more detail this morning. They say there was a joint US-Afghan operation yesterday trying to clear the Arghandab Valley, presumably because of the election on Saturday, the second round in the Afghan election. Afghan and international forces are trying to secure as much ground as possible ahead of that election, so intensification of security operations. Towards the end of the operation, the Taliban counterattacked. There was an airstrike called in to deal with that Taliban counterattack, and in that airstrike, 5 US soldiers, an Afghan interpreter and an Afghan soldier were killed.
And friends, a worker building a monorail in Brazil's biggest city, Sao Paulo, has died after a section of the prestigious project collapsed. The authorities at the scene said at least 2 others had been injured. The 17.7-kilometer monorail was originally meant to be completed for the Football World Cup, which starts in 3 days, but it's behind schedule. Aerial footage here shows extensive damage to the structure, as Katie Watson reports.
A worker who was working on this monorail that was being constructed, which took people from the domestic airport in the centre of Sao Paulo. One worker died, another was injured. Now, this was a project that was meant to be for the World Cup, but it was long since delayed, along with several other urban infrastructure projects. That's been a big criticism of Brazil, the fact that Brazil hasn't been able to complete these much-promised urban infrastructure projects, airports, that sort of thing. It's been a big concern here and a big frustration for many people.
Okay, and thank you, Katie. That's a short story there. Friends, I've got not video, but a still picture to show you here. Prime Minister, well, let's see, what happened? I grabbed a couple of photographs, and for some reason, they're not displaying. I wanted to show you his picture. Well, we will get a picture of Mr. Rivlin tomorrow night. And I had one with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu congratulating Mr. Rivlin on his election today. Mr. Rivlin, a former parliamentary speaker and cabinet minister, defeated longtime Mayor Shetrit by 63 to 53 in a secret runoff ballot for the presidency of Israel. He will succeed Shimon Peres, 90, who ends his 11-year term in July. The Israeli president occupies a largely ceremonial position and has no formal role in peace talks with the Palestinians. Of course, as you well know, the current president just yesterday went to the Vatican and sat alongside the Pope in the middle, and on the other side, Mahmoud Abbas of the Palestinian Authority. Mr. Rivlin, a member of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's right-wing Likud party, will become Israel's 10th president. He won when voting today went to a second round. From, quote, "From this moment, I do not belong to any party. Rather, I belong to everyone, a man of the nation," he told Knesset members after the poll. Quote, "I stand here before you with a great mission. Long live the Israeli democracy. Long live Israel." End quote. The 74-year-old opposes the creation of a Palestinian state, putting him at odds with the platform adopted by Mr. Netanyahu. He is also a supporter of Jewish settlements in the occupied West Bank, another central issue in the dispute between Israel and the Palestinians. And then right here I had a big close-up picture of Mr. Rivlin to show you. But again, he'll become Israel's 10th president. He was born in 1939, Reuven Rivlin, born in Jerusalem. He was trained as a lawyer. He first was elected to the Knesset Parliament in 1988. He's former chairman of Beitar Jerusalem Sports Association and loyal supporter of their football team. He served as Minister of Communications under then Prime Minister Ariel Sharon between 2001 and 2003, and he was elected Knesset Speaker in 2003 in an uncontested victory. Congratulating Mr. Rivlin at a ceremony earlier today, Mr. Netanyahu cited their common political history. Quote, I know, excuse me, friends, quote, I know you will do your utmost as president to meet the twofold mission of unifying the nation and showing unity in the face of external challenges, the Prime Minister is quoted as saying by Reuters news agency. Quote, I promise as a Prime Minister from a similar background to work with you. And again, Reuven Rivlin, elected as Israel's 10th president. Okay, and I've got more detail on that. In a runoff vote against Mayor Shetrit from the Tenua party, TNUAH party, he will take over the office of president when President Shimon Peres steps down after 7 years on July 26. After leaving the Knesset, Rivlin went to the Western Wall to pray and later to his father's grave. The race in the Knesset was termed dramatic. In the first round, Rivlin and Mayor Shetrit were close. Rivlin had 44 votes and Shetrit 31. Following his victory, Rivlin addressed the Knesset as well as all citizens of Israel, including Jews, Arabs, Druze, the rich, the poor, the more and less observant, and recited a blessing. We have reached the end of a difficult and turbulent election cycle. The public's trust in the presidency has suffered a hard blow. It is our duty to rehabilitate and restore it. I was a politician for many years, he said, but now I must abandon party politics and become a man of the nation. The president's residence, which he will shortly occupy, is the house of all Israelis, he added. I thank you for your faith in me, he told the Knesset. Long live Israeli democracy, long live the state of Israel. At one point, Prime Minister Netanyahu reportedly tried to gain support to abolish the office of presidency because he was dissatisfied with the candidates, particularly Rivlin. In the end, however, he endorsed Rivlin for the post. And again, Reuven Rivlin, who was born in Jerusalem, to be the 10th president toward the end of July of Israel. He is a descendant of the students of the Vilna Gaon, the son of Yosef Yoel Rivlin, also a politician. He is a lawyer with a degree from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. He's married to Nekama and has 4 children. Rivlin is well known as an avid supporter of the Beitar Jerusalem soccer team, at one time chairman of the team. During a lull in his political career, he appeared on television in a political satire show which led him back to politics. He is well known for his sense of humor. One of Israel's comedians noted, "I think he'll be great I think it will be great to have someone like him with his sense of humor as president. Israel is already termed the startup nation. With Rivlin as president, we may also be called the stand-up nation. All right, friends, now let's go on to our next story in the few minutes we have remaining. Al-Qaeda attacked and seized control over Iraq's third largest city, Mosul, M-O-S-U-L.
Mosul, a wealthy, sophisticated city, is collapsing into violence and destruction. From armoured vehicles abandoned and burning by the roadside comes the sound of ammunition exploding. Increasingly, Iraq as a whole seems like a country at war with itself. Jihadists from the Al-Qaeda affiliate, known as the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant, are now in charge here.
All the people have fled, they have left their homes, and many people are lying dead on the streets. Will Iraq accept this?
The army dissolved. They were terrified. They fled, so we left too.
The commanders were the first to flee, leaving the soldiers alone. The commanders are to blame.
No order, no discipline, no hope. In the last few days, tens of thousands of people have escaped from this part of northern Iraq. The danger is that Iraq could break up into its component parts, Sunni, Shia and Kurdish, with unknown consequences for the people who live here.
For Iraq and the government of Nouri al-Maliki, this is a critical moment. The situation's been getting worse all this year. In January, the key town of Fallujah was taken over by extremists affiliated to Al-Qaeda, and they're still there. In April, there were elections and things seemed a bit better, but no government has yet been formed, and in this power vacuum, the gunmen are thriving. There are almost daily bombings, largely ignored in the outside world. In May alone, 800 people died.
In December 2011, the American forces quietly left Iraq after 8 years. Thousands of Western troops had died, and hundreds of thousands, maybe more, Iraqis.
This is an opportunity for Iraq to forge ahead on the path to security and prosperity.
But today, the view from Washington of the Islamist threat was a lot more realistic.
The threat is not just a threat to Iraq or the stability of Iraq, but it is a threat to the region.
In Iraq itself, a weak government is struggling to hold the country together, and the second city is in fundamentalist hands. The Americans and British aren't likely to come back. Iraq is on its own.
Friends, in addition to what you heard the United States say in the video, a spokesman for UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said he was gravely concerned at the situation. He encouraged the Iraqi government and the Kurdish regional government to cooperate in restoring security to the region. Now, I'll talk about the region. You know, Iran is close by, and Iranian advanced ballistic missiles are now able to reach a distance of 5,000 kilometers. A senior-level Iranian official stated that the basis of the U.S. military's strategic bombs in the Indian Ocean is to be in range of their country. This is the first time that Iran named the base, which is more than 5,000 kilometers away, thus announcing long-range improved missiles in their possession. And there's one of the pictures we have from one of the news agencies. Now, let's see if I have some more detail here, friends. In the background of the remarks of the IDF Chief of Staff today about Iran's nuclear program and the threats the Islamic Republic poses to peace in the Middle East, a senior-level official in Tehran revealed Iran's ability to threaten more remote districts. A senior-level official warned that the basis of U.S. strategic bombs in the Indian Ocean is to be in range of missiles currently in Iran's possession. This is the first time that Iran mentioned the U.S. military base. I think I mentioned that, read that part to you a little earlier. This is an unprecedented threat. Until now, Iran was within the limited range of 2,000 kilometers and had nothing beyond that. It is said now that it can now strike at a range of 5,000 kilometers. In case of a mistake on the part of the U.S., military bases in Bahrain and another area in the Indian Ocean are not safe from Iran's missiles, threatened Khomeini's representative to the Iranian Revolutionary Guards. The head of the Center for Space Research at the Fisher Institute for Air and Space Strategic Studies stated that the declaration is exceptional because of the declared range, which for years was 2,000 kilometers. It is known that Iran possesses missiles with a range of 3,500 kilometers at least, but they didn't perform or try them or even deny their existence. But things are changing dramatically this year, friends. And as I mentioned, if God doesn't go ahead and allow the fifth seal, the Great Tribulation, to kick in this year, it's because he's showing mercy on his elect who need to pull it together. And that's only a maybe. He may not show the mercy. This whole thing may come together this year. Now, I've got just a minute that I can share with you a couple minutes. A story I pulled out from our archives. I think this goes back to a month or two, where Obama, the United States President Obama, said there is a real chance for an Iran agreement. Remember that news story? In a speech on U.S. foreign policy, the U.S. President discussed Iran's nuclear program, the Syrian civil war, and the Ukraine tensions. And, well, I think the headline is probably enough for you there. That was from back in May 22nd, May 29, and friends, and then I ought to pull out of the archive the former United States Secretary of State William Schultz's statements about Iran will smile at your face, slap you on the back, send you on your way, and then they'll smile at your face, send you on your way, stab you in the back. I don't have the full quote, but he basically said, you cannot trust what they say. Well, you got to watch what they do. And yeah, they'll make all kind of agreements with you, but they don't keep them. What you got to watch, where you got to watch what they say, is when they think you're not looking on their own television channels in their own language, and see how they laugh at anybody naive enough to make an agreement with them. Now, let me see what else I have with you in the 1 or 2 minutes we can go here. I think I have a video that relates, Germany was in the news with the thunderstorm, or the violent storms overnight last night that killed at least 6 people there. Well, they're also in today's news with a underground cave rescue they need to be making. I think this is the story on that here. Well, it doesn't look like that story's going. Oh, here we go.
A stunning landscape close to the Austrian border. But the German Alps is also home to the most difficult and deepest caves in Europe. And 1,000 meters below the surface, one man got injured and was unable to move. His friend spent 12 hours to climb to the surface to raise the alarm.
What happened was that 3 explorers descended into the cave and worked their way down to a depth of 1,000 meters. Then one of the explorers was hit by a stone.
Okay, friends, and I'm really out of time, so we're going to come on out of that story. Thanks for joining me tonight for this Tuesday night report. God willing, and the creek don't rise. We'll be back again tomorrow with the day's current news related to the Bible and prophecy right here on Nightcast. Until next time, this is your host, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth, saying, so long, friends.
You have been watching Nightcast with Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. Nightcast can be seen Sunday through Thursday nights here on cogtv.org. Tonight's program is also available anytime on demand in the cogtv.org video archive.